And I do see all 5 managers. President Ziegler.
Thank you. Because we're meeting remotely due to COVID, I believe we need to have a roll call attendance. Mr. Smith, can you take attendance, please?
Yes. Manager Crafton?
Present.
Manager Duval?
Yes, present.
Manager Cook?
As a point of order, although I'm present only for purposes of raising my objection to the holding of this meeting, it's my understanding, and it was unclear, but I don't believe this was a regularly scheduled meeting. I looked on the agendas from December of last year. I did not see it as a regularly scheduled. I also did not see it listed as a special meeting. And furthermore, did anybody mail me a notice of this meeting?
We'll continue with the roll and come back if that's okay, Manager Cook. Manager Pedersen?
Present.
President Ziegler?
Present.
Next question about the meeting.
Ziegler, managers, scheduled meeting. It is not a special meeting, therefore it was not known. It was in the original calendar. My understanding is there's no distinction between a workshop and a regular scheduled meeting. We have just simply turned this into having business items, but Mr. Smith may have something additional to add to that.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree that the meeting was on the regular meeting calendar. The designation of a workshop is a designation of what the nature of the agenda is. And at its meeting earlier in October, the board took action to notice public hearings for this evening's meeting. And so that also set up the agenda of items of business for this meeting.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I renew my objection. If you're going to be, with the statute is clear, changing the time or place of a document of a meeting or its substance requires a special notice, being a special meeting. It wasn't otherwise scheduled, wasn't scheduled as a special meeting. You don't turn work sessions into active meetings, and therefore to hold this, I believe, would be in violation of the not only open meeting law and also a violation of 103D 315 subdivision 10, which does require a written notice if a meeting is being called. And I did look at the schedule of meetings that was adopted. There was actually no meeting listed in the schedule in December. So, and whether you notice the meeting or not, I don't think changes that fact.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do we have any motions regarding this item?
Go ahead. President Ziegler, I move we accept the agenda as written.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on the agenda?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I have several points of order. First of all, my understanding based on the documentation, but it's confusing. I need to know exactly when did the notice go out to Bowser, the counties, etc.
President Ziegler, managers, that notice went out on October 11th. Oh, wait, that was when it went out.
I believe it was October 16th.
October 16th, yes, thank you.
And so follow-up question to that is, it was referred to in, I believe, the letter from Bowser, but when does the review period under 103B 231N.
President Ziegler,
Yes,
managers at the end of business day yesterday.
That was 60 days.
This is a minor plan amendment. It was 30 days.
Was there any analysis? Well, excuse me. Reading the statute, there's no provision for shortening up the period of time. The statute's very clear. Any amendments, the 60-day rule still applies. There was no, in fact, nobody gave a notice as to how long the commentary period was, and you can't take away the rights of the county or anybody else to comment on this plan provision. So in my opinion, this period of time is still open. It doesn't expire until, I guess it would be December 10th. There's no statement in the, as I read the plan, that there's just a 30-day period. So therefore, the normal rules would apply. Bowser does not have the authority to shorten a statutory time frame. It was not given that authority to shorten the statutory time frame. So on that basis, then I would move that we table this item until after the review period, and that the meeting be held not earlier than 14 days after the end of the review period as specified by statute.
we have a
I think
motion.
that-
Do we have it? Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Hearing no second, the motion fails for lack of a second.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Smith.
if I could, just for the record and the members of the public that are present, the district's plan, section 9.14, spells out the plan amendment process, and it specifically identifies that amendments to the plan will be presumed to be minor amendments. The agency responsible for approval of the district's plan, the Board of Water and Soil Resources, also reviewed the plan. This is pursuant to Minnesota Rule 8410-0140, and concurred that it was a minor amendment, subject to any objection from either Hennepin or Carver County. Both counties were aware of the minor plan amendment posture, and neither county entered an objection.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
all due respect to Mr. Smith, I disagree with his analysis. As I stated before, neither Bowser nor the district has the ability to shorten the statutory time frames on that basis. I've read the notices. There was no reference to renewal periods, a statement of a date. That date is obviously erroneous. And I know, in fact, from Carver County, they were unaware of the fact that this was going to be a minor plan amendment, or the normal period of time has been shortened. And in fact, I note that there was no discussion in the response from Bowser. It used minor plan amendment, but I note that the rules established by Bowser do not comply with the statute. Therefore, those rules are ineffective. There is no provision for those rules to be to shorten or change the time frame. The statute is explicit. There is no appropriate definition of a minor, and a presumption carries no weight on that basis. And how anybody can conclude that a plan amendment that would call for the expenditure of $5.775 million in a given year, which would be over 90% of the normal amount, could it possibly in any way, shape, or fashion be minor? That would be totally erroneous conclusion. And I saw no analysis by Bowser as to whether or not this did qualify as a minor plan amendment. At a minimum, we should have had that analysis. And quite frankly, I was very disappointed in the response we received from Bowser in that regard. So absent a finding that it was actually a minor plan amendment under the rules, then I don't believe their approval is sufficient to shorten the statutory time frame under 103.231. Even that being said, the subject matter of the amendment is not within the purview of Bowser. This is not well, I lost her, was it a construction CIP? It's so it's not an improvement project. This is at best the acquisition of a piece of property. It does not fall with 103B, and therefore it's not within the purview of the district in the first place to grant. And if you're claiming that it is, then 103B.231 would apply for all the reasons I previously stated. And I'll state this, that stating that presumption of a minor plan amendment basically is nothing. Again, as I said, the rules are the rules. You can't override the rules of the statute with a blanket statement, like that. And so I believe I will stop at that point.
Okay, so the first item on the agenda is the public hearing.
Mr. President, I don't believe we voted on the motion to approve the agenda.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So if there's no other questions, can we have a roll call vote on approving the agenda?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Without waiving my other objections to the holding of this meeting, and vote no.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes,
Motion carries 4-1.
thank you. So the first item on the agenda then is the public hearing for time efficiency. Staff has put together a timer for the public and the managers. What I'd like to do is the public, any member of the public who would like to speak will get 3 minutes. The managers will each get 10 minutes, and any rebuttal will be 1 minute or less. So do we have a motion to open the public hearing? Do we need to vote on that?
I would suggest that before open public hearing, Mr. Smith give a brief overview of the resolutions that are before us tonight. I will give a brief review of the project and how we've gotten to this point, and then I think we should open it for comment.
Okay, please proceed.
Mr. President, managers, the purpose of these public hearings are to consider comments on the proposed plan amendment, specifically the amendment to your plan to add the Opportunity Project, now designated as the Spring Road Conservation Project. Under the watershed management law, in order for a project to proceed, it first needs to be amended into the plan. And the district's plan identified projects like this, opportunity projects that arise in a specific section 9.13 of the plan. So the first order of business in the first public hearing is about amending the plan to include this project with the detailed language in the proposed plan amendment. Secondly, under the watershed planning law, the next step would be to order the project under Minnesota Statutes 103B.251. And so there's also a public hearing provided for that. Tonight, we're having both public hearings. And my suggestion to the board would be for members of the public, I think they may well want to offer comments on both the plan amendment and ordering the project. And it might be most efficient to allow them to refer to and designate their comments as applying to both, for the sake of expediency for everyone. So that is the nature of the two public hearings. And with that, Mr. Jeffrey can explain the background on the project.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. President Ziegler, managers, I will share my screen here, a brief presentation going through how we got to this point, and then I will turn it back to the board. Moment. All right. Should be up now. President managers, again, here tonight to talk about the Spring Lake Conservation or Spring Lake Road Conservation Project that's located in Hennepin County, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, of course, on Spring Road. Here is overall site map of the southwest portion of the watershed district. You'll see from left to right on the screen in color is the city of Chaska, then blue is Chanhassen, and then the yellow is the city of Eden Prairie. To the south is the city of Shakopee across the Minnesota River. The black line you see is the watershed district legal boundaries, not necessarily the hydrologic boundaries. If you'll remember, in 2018, those boundaries were changed to no longer bisect individual properties and have them reside within two different counties. What I'd like to point out here is, so moving along south, the project is here. Frederick Miller Spring is the star. This is Flying Cloud Road, Pioneer Trail. This is Spring Road coming down. Here is Great Plain Boulevard or 101 and Dell Road here. All of the orange that you see are regional trail networks of either Hennepin, Carberry, or Three Rivers Park districts. So it is, comments have been made about will this be beneficial to the entire watershed? Well, there's always a give and take within watershed. That's the reason we cross political boundaries. Money might not always benefit each municipality equally for a particular project. But this one, I think, has a unique nexus of trail networks as well as the Frederick Miller Spring. And then if we were to acquire it and develop educational, scientific, and recreational opportunities, that would also be beneficial to the district. And then overall, there's the water resource protection of the one wetland, floodplain wetland on the site, or Riley Creek, as well as the Minnesota River, which all of our namesake creeks drain to. So as Mr. Smith pointed out, our plan does identify there are 5 goals and several strategies within that. This is chapter 3 of our plan that relate to this project. I'll let you read those for yourself. They are also available on our website. Again, chapter 3, goals and strategy, but 8, 9, 10, 12, and 13 all relate to it for this project itself. There are other goals that would relate depending upon what the end use of the project is, but it does not relate it to, at this time, to the acquisition and preservation and restoration of this property. So why? Why is the district interested? I've heard a number of things from a number of different managers about this, but primarily it's a very unique ecological resources. There is an existing population of kittentail on the site, which is a threatened species. There's known occurrences of patella evening primrose in the area, which is a species of special concern. There's prime rusty patch bumblebee habitat. Is the last remnant of dry prairie of subtype gravel, subtype sand gravel. There's less 1%, which is identified in the DNR Regional Ecological Corridor Map and as a regional significantly ecological significant ecological area in the Minnesota County Biological Survey. Throughout this entire lower valley, as well as on this property and adjoining properties, we have seeps and springs. That includes Frederick Miller, which is not fed by this property to the best of our knowledge, but is a unique resource immediately adjacent to this that does draw people from throughout the state to this area. That existence of seeps is, as you'll remember, we had an individual from the University of Minnesota present to us some 2 years ago now, about wanting to do seep inventory. And we ourselves, with our groundwater, want to look at the groundwater surface water interaction throughout the district. And then, of course, it's adjacent and tributary to both Riley Creek and the Minnesota River, both of which are impaired. And then protection of the existing floodplain wetland. On the right, you will see the original land survey from 1856, showing that there are 3 counties in the area: the Hennepin, Scott, and Carver counties. Predominantly, it is either upland deciduous forests or oak savanna. On the left is the 1998 County Biological Survey of Rare Communities and Species. The area in question is circled in red, and you'll note a rather predominant absence of unique areas such as this. Our plan also identified this as a high-risk erosion area, which is based upon percentage of slope, soil texture, contributing watershed, groundwater interaction with the surface. So again, that slide shouldn't have stayed in here, so I'm going to skip right past that. Just a quick overview of the property itself. As we talk about things that could be done with this property, if you look to the picture on the right, you'll see the house. This is standing right where that black circle is. If the district so desired, that area could be turned into the Riley Purgatory headquarters, and then the remaining land restored. We have been in contact with Hennepin County Land and Water, and they are very interested in being a major partner in the restoration of this land. They have restored the land, the Prairie Bluff preservation area that is to the east. They were responsible for the restoration of that area. I want to talk briefly about the tax burden that would be a result from this project: $5.775 million for the acquisition of this property. A table on the left and the columns shown in blue are the difference in levy for Carver County 23-24. So last year's levy on the left, this year's levy on the right. The one on the right in the more beige color is Hennepin County. Hennepin County's tax burden comes directly from the spreadsheet that they provided to me. The Carver County comes from a formula that Carver County gave me, and then a linear regression of what it would be. So the numbers on the right are directly from their tax rolls. The numbers on the left are calculated based upon that equation. We are looking at 75.5% coming from Hennepin County, 24.5% coming from Carver County. Those numbers, this is the table in the upper right-hand corner. We're looking about 3 million, a little over 3 million coming from Hennepin County. This is our total levy. This is not for this property, and a little under 1 million coming from Carver County. Before without the purchases of land, we would look at a 4% increase in our levy over 23 for the 24 year. With the acquisition, we're looking at an 8% increase. It remains a 4% difference projected out, just straight line for the next 3 years, assuming no adjustments are made to the plan based upon any future decisions made by the board. We did reach out to a number of different organizations to look for partnerships in funding of this. It started when Senator Wodzinski placed it into the bonding bill for the state in 23. That never made it out of committee. The Department of Natural Resources did not have the resources or fundings available to acquire it. We reached out to Hennepin County, and that's where we ended up coming up with the $500,000 grant, but that came through Minnesota Land Trust, who they have a partnership with. City of Eden Prairie has been talked to. While they have not dedicated funds to this, they have understood, they understand that there are projects that may be done in Eden Prairie that, due to our dedicating funds to this, they would be able to perhaps help and offset some of that cost so that they could still advance in the same schedule. One such being the Purgatory Recreation Area berm. We reached out to the Conservation Fund. They were a short-term loan that was charging 1% above prime, and so it wasn't financially responsible. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was not interested because of the separation with Flying Cloud Road. RIM funds were not available for this. We reached out to Bowser. They said this would not be what they were targeting those funds at. CLP would be a possibility, but the timing on that, this would be a year-long process to get CLP funds. Metro Big Rivers, Three Rivers, were both reached out to. Neither had any interest in it for a couple of different reasons, but primarily the size and location. Ultimately, the Lessard Sands Outdoor Heritage Council will be passing through funds to the Minnesota Land Trust for acquisition of an easement for $500,000. And the Metawakanton Sioux has been contacted, but they have not yet responded except to say we will consider it. There's also been talk about what will happen with the capital improvement plan, what projects will be affected by this. So the map that I'm showing here is the entire watershed district boundaries and all of the projects that were identified in the capital plan, in the original 2017 10-year plan, as well as the Chanhassen High School reuse project, which was added through a plan amendment. Everything that is in green are projects that have been done. Everything in orange are projects that are pending or in progress. So 35 projects were identified in the plan. A lot more projects were identified than that, but 35 made it into the plan. Of those, 15 have been completed. Of those 15 that were completed, 7 of those were within Carver County. 3 projects of those 35 have been delayed indefinitely due to a lack of partners. That being STL1, which is Starring Lake 1, which is a creek restoration through golf course that did not want to alter their playability of their course. And then 2 projects up by Lake Lucy. Those projects both having issues identifying private landowners that would be willing to participate with that. We have 6 projects that are currently in feasibility or design phase. It's a little bit misleading. Of those 6, 3 of those are one project that has been combined in. Those are the 3 on Lotus Lake that were individual projects. We amended it to look at them all in one to gain an efficiency of contracting, contract administration, construction administration, and bid administration. But also all of those projects are within Carver County. The 2 capital projects that are going to be moved out are Red Rock Lake 7 and Mitchell Lake 3. And those are circled in red on the map. These scored 28 and a 34 respectively. Red Rock 28, Mitchell Lake at 23. If you remember, we did the prioritization scoring for this project. If we consider the $500,000 from Minnesota Land Trust to be a partnership, then it scores a 39. In the absence of that, it scores a 33. All of the projects that have been done to date have scored 30 or higher, 43 being the highest of any of the projects. Average score for all projects done is 35.6. The planned levy for groundwater and wetland program for next year has been delayed a year. That will not affect our programming. We still have adequate fundings in the budget of both of those to continue what we want to plan for our 24 year. B5, which is in purple, was delayed a year, but that is not solely a result of the levy. Part of that is to do with aligning with the scheduled construction or reconstruction of Galpin Boulevard. Part of that project will move forward sooner. That will be the culvert crossing that will be done by the city of Chanhassen in partnership. And then the second alum dose on Lotus was also delayed a year. That, again, was not exclusively due to levy implications. University of Minnesota is in the process of doing their phase 2 studies. I've heard from managers on this board that they are concerned about how wake boats will affect alum treatment. I'm hopeful that we'll have some results from that study and be able to apply it to our dosing of Lotus Lake. That's really just a rundown of our of the project background and the implications of it. I just wanted to bring everybody up to speed because I know a number of those things were discussed in closed meetings and may not have always been open to the public. So with that, I will turn it back to you, President Ziegler.
Thank you. So at this point, I'd like to remind everyone again that there are time limits. And I believe Amy Bockham is our timekeeper tonight. So do we want to have a motion to open the public hearing at this point, Administrator Jeffrey?
President Ziegler, unless you want to provide each manager with time to give their thoughts on the project beforehand, and then open the public
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Smith.
I think given the agenda and the adoption of the agenda, the chair has the authority to open the hearing, and I consider it open with Mr. Jeffrey's presentation starting it. I think the next order of business would be to hear comments from the public. And then upon hearing the comments from the public, you can turn to the board for deliberation.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak at this time? Please identify yourself and your address.
Well, Mr. President.
We have a member of the public with their hand up. His picture keeps jumping around, so I can't.
I can wait for Larry.
Well, I just want to make, excuse me, Mr. President, sorry.
Manager Cook, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that I'd like to hear from the other members first, but I am a member of the public. So I have comments to say as far as being a member of the public as well, and I will obviously have comments as a manager as well. So I'd like Mr. Jacobs to proceed, please.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. If you haven't already met me, my name is Morgan Jacobs. I'm a volunteer with the Spring Valley Friends, where I now serve as the president. Our group has been struggling to protect these remaining bluff lands for the past 3 years. And we see this plan as a win-win for the seller and the greater public. So we've already pledged our full support and gratitude to the Watershed District for taking this step. But I also like to speak tonight as a lifelong resident of this river valley, living first in Chaska and now in Carver. These bluffs have been part of my life for as long as I can remember. And the drive into Eden Prairie through the hills has made such an impact on me as a kid. The bluffs shouldn't be able to enjoy this ancient local nature in the same way that I have. And when I imagine how we're going to save it from the destructive crawl of modern development, the only thing I can see working is new out-of-the-box thinking from the community and its governing bodies. And that's what this plan really represents to me. It's a shift towards a better future where we save and enjoy the nature that we still have left. And I can assure the managers that I'm not alone in this sentiment. Every person that I've spoken with about this issue offers the same desire for change that I yearn for. We all love this area's land and deserve to see it preserved. So let's celebrate the watershed for helping us achieve that. And I'll yield the rest of my time to Larry.
Thank you, if I may, Mr. President. use my
Yes, please
3
proceed.
minutes as member of the public. I live in Chanhassen, Lotus Lake. We're in Carver County. First thing I'll say is I have no problem with preserving this property, but the watershed is not the mechanism for accomplishing that. And I appreciate people thinking outside the box, but under a rule of law, we are not allowed to think outside the box. And so I'd love to learn how to, to do this. I think, and I just want to make clear because I spoke with people. I mean, Rebecca, I forget her name, Prochaska, I think it was, Ted Melby on that basis. And they pitched me on this. They said, we already have the money lined up. All we need is a partner. That has not come to fruition. And I will address that further as to how that impacts the evaluation. But my message to the friends is, if this is important, go out and help us find the money. It is not, I don't believe it is appropriate under the rules for the people of Hennepin County and Carver County to be carrying this boat, okay, of money. Up there on Lake Vermilion, which Mr. Smith is clearly familiar with, the DNR got, legislative funding. That's where the money should be. It should not be put on the backs of the taxpayers in Hennepin County, and certainly not in those in Carver County. What we're talking about is more of a park. It is not a water project, and I'll talk more when my time comes up as a manager. But again, I'm not against preserving it. But, we have rules. We have our role. The state legislature has decided on who does what in this state. So I just want to understand from that perspective. Thank you. I'll yield.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak at this time? I don't see any hands up. Administrator Jeffrey, do you see any hands up?
I do not see any new hands up.
Mr. Jacobs, I believe, has raised his hand again. I'm not sure if that's intentional.
It is. I just was hoping to respond to one thing that I heard Larry say that I wanted to correct. As he mentioned that there was some suggestion or some selling from the group on an extra partner on this, and that was not sold to him by a group. It was by a volunteer who was confused about where the funding was coming from. That never came from Spring Valley Friends. That's all.
Thank you. So no one else from the public has hands up? Administrator Jeffrey?
President Ziegler, I am not seeing anyone with their hand up.
Okay, let's go through the managers. Should we start with Manager Crafton first?
Mr. President, could I,
Yes.
if I could just suggest in terms of process, we've heard all the comments that members of the public want to offer, but I would suggest we formally close the public hearing on the plan amendment and then open the opportunity one more time for any comments that anyone else wants to make on the ordering of the project. And then we conclude both of those hearings. And then the board can proceed to deliberate first on the plan amendment and then deliberate on ordering the project if it adopts the plan amendment, if that all makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense. So do we have any motions at this time for closing the public hearing? Is that what I'm understanding?
On the plan amendment.
President
Ziegler,
Ziegler,
go ahead.
I move we close the public hearing on the plan amendment.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments from the managers? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Smith? Thank you.
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Without waiving my prior objections, I'll vote no.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1. And now we
Okay.
would open the public hearing formally on the ordering of the project, recognizing that there may not be further comments, but at least give that opportunity.
So we don't need a vote for that. Is that correct?
No, you can, as chair, declare it open.
So I'd like to declare the public hearing on the adopting the plan amendment, which is resolution 23-072.
President Ziegler, this public hearing will be on ordering of the project itself. So the last public hearing was the plan amendment.
Okay,
President Ziegler.
Manager Crafton.
Yeah, so that's 23-073 that we're considering.
Okay. Thank you. So is there any members of the public who want to speak on the ordering of the Spring Road Conservation Project Resolution 23-073? I see one hand up. Inquist,
Ms. Chesney Enquist.
yes.
Thank you. Good evening, President Ziegler, managers, Administrator Jeffrey. I have to apologize. I'm in the midst of diaper changes and bedtime and all sorts of things right now, so I'm not very well equipped or prepared to remark. But I would like to share. I have followed as a member of the public as closely as I can the activity around rezoning and potential for conservation at this site, and spoken to this board and submitted written testimony for years about what's happening. And what is happening is an unprecedented opportunity to preserve the last public source of drinkable groundwater in the region. I don't mean in the metro area, I mean within states, statewide. I've spoken to people from all of our neighboring states who travel here to drink water, and I would really encourage the board to re-examine its ranking structure for infrastructure, I think was the category, because as far as drinking water goes and, you know, the jeopardy that we are all in, I think it's going to be very, very important, is very important to please, thank you for amending your plan. Thank you for considering dialogue at more pro time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, Administrator Jeffrey, that you can see with a hand up?
I am not seeing anyone, President Ziegler.
Well, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
again, I'm a member of the public as well, so I have a couple of things to say, and I'll have additional things to say during the deliberation.
Please proceed.
First of all, several things about ordering this project. One, this project is not necessary. The land acquisition is not necessary to fulfill our obligations. I live in this district. Previously, it does not fit within the district purposes, either under 103B, because it's not a capital improvement project, nor does it fall within the express purposes under 103D. As I said before, this may be a great conservation project, but the district is not the mechanism for accomplishing it. And, you know, the Friends of the Valley should be out there trying to raise money for this. I note in the comment section that a good deal of them live outside of the watershed district. And if they think this is important, and they should be volunteering and contributing toward this, so their property can be levied as much as the people within the district, if they think it's this important. You know, if this is as important as you say, this is a state issue, just like the property up on Lake Vermilion. And we should not be putting it on our backs, you know, and just Hennepin and Carver and just the little pieces of it, when as I will speak later, it has no benefits to the purposes for which our district is formed. We are not in the park business, okay? We're in water protection business and very specific water protection benefits. So this project doesn't fall within, in my opinion, within our bailiwick. I just want to make that clear. It should be preserved, but we are not the vehicle for doing so. And I don't think I should be, or my fellow taxpayers should be carrying the burden of buying this property, especially when apparently no other conservation entity who are in the business of conserving properties, none of them apparently, as I'm told, showed any interest in doing that. If that's the case, we should be rethinking, why are we putting our money there? We should be putting our money where it needs to be put, which is protecting our waters, which is basically our task given to us by the legislature. So again, protect it, but we are not the vehicle for accomplishing that. So thank you. I'll yield back.
Okay, Administrator Jeffrey, do you see any other hands up?
President Ziegler, I do not.
Do we need to make a motion to close the public hearing, or can I just do that? Mr. Smith is talking.
Yes. Go ahead and have a motion, Mr. Chair.
Do we have a motion to close the public hearing on ordering the Spring Road Conservation Project?
President Ziegler?
Manager Kraft?
Okay, I move that we order the Spring Road Conservation Project hearing closed.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing on the Spring Road funding, right? Is that? Yeah. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. The Spring Road.
Ordering the project.
Ordering the project. Okay, hearing no other comments, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Or waiving my prior objections, I vote no.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Okay, so I believe that takes care of items 4 and 5 on the agenda. The next item on the agenda is,
President Ziegler?
yes,
So that was the public hearing for those two resolutions. Now we need to go through each resolution one by one. But I believe you were going to allow managers to speak. So having heard the public comment.
so I believe it makes sense to just talk about both for each manager once, rather than talking about them separately. If we can combine the comments for both items 4 and 5. And if we can start with Manager Crafton.
Excuse me, Mr. President, point of order.
Manager Cook?
We have two resolutions, Robert's rules. We bring forth each resolution. At each one, we have an opportunity to speak in discussion.
Okay, we'll do it that way. Manager Crafton?
Okay, so I've been supportive of this from the beginning. I've originally voted against the permit.
Excuse me, Mr. President, point of order.
Manager Cook?
Do we have a resolution on the floor, or are we going to allow debate before and then also after a resolution is introduced?
I think that the best way to do it would be to have a motion and a second on the resolution, rather than talking about the same resolution twice. Manager Crafton?
So are you asking, President Ziegler, are you asking for motion
Would
to
you like to
include
make a
both
motion?
adopting the plan amendment as well as
I think
Ordering
we're gonna do them
project?
separately. So the first one is resolution 23-072 to adopt the plan amendment.
President Ziegler?
Yes,
So I would like a motion to adopt the plan amendment for Spring Road Conservation Project, resolution 2372.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Manager Crafton, you were gonna talk about this resolution, I believe.
No, I've long been a supporter of this, and I just wanted to thank all that contacted me about how they felt about this project and offered their support and their passion for us preserving it. So that meant a lot. I got a lot of those every day, it seems like, for the last couple weeks, but they meant a lot to me. And they just reinforced my desire to do this. We've learned so much about ecosystems from some science findings through soil health issues or studies. And this is an opportunity to really do some good research, to do restoration, to allow for more groundwater recharge. There's so many positives, and we can't protect this if we don't own it. So that's become more and more clear. So I just so appreciative that the board is willing to do this, or has a willingness. So I am strongly behind adopting this amendment, improving it.
Manager Pedersen, would you like to say anything on this?
I would. First of all, I'd like to thank the Spring Hill Friends. I also was the recipient of many emails, but I also received emails from other members of our community. And as of right before the meeting, I had 71 positive comments that were sent to me separately, and only one person who responded in a negative way to this. So I, as well as Manager Crafton, feel quite appreciative of the time that people spent and kind of reaffirmed my feeling about this. The way I look at this is, over the long term, we will be able to get out of our $8,000 a month rental that our district office is in, and that's not including the maintenance costs that we have to pay to keep that space up. I see this as a huge resource for educational opportunities, allowing the public to come and see exactly what you can do to preserve areas, to help water, to really conserve an ecologically precious area where there's only 1% of this left. I also see this as, sort of a recreational thing too, if we have that included in the City of Eden Prairie's pathway through it all. So in my mind, I find this to be kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity for our watershed district. And I think that 20 years from now, if this goes through, we've passed it, we've made some changes, we've improved that space, this is going to be really an astounding area where people can go see what this really did look like, see what they can do to help our water resources. I'm soundly behind all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Manager Duval.
So I put together some notes because I've had trouble, I guess, being relatively new, being able to articulate it. So being a relatively new member of the Board of Managers, I think this is an extraordinary time period in which we live. I've attended other water and watershed conferences across the state over time, and I've come to see and appreciate how other watersheds have done business and looked at the kinds of projects they have, and sometimes warts and all. Our watershed deals with water most of the time when we have water. And in our 3 watersheds, 13 lakes, 25 parks, and how it's integrated into 7 local communities. I think the project that we have before us, the Spring Road Conservation Project, is a once in a decade or maybe once in a generational type project. In a few years, it could look like one of the best strategic things we could have done as a watershed. I won't repeat much of what's in the other documentation tonight, other than to say time is short and do the right thing. Spring Road Conservation Project could be a centerpiece of how the watershed moves forward as a leader in dealing with our natural resources from a holistic point of view. Fact of the matter is, the water quality and quantity, lakes, streams, wetlands, habitat, urban development, they're all related. Having been on the board for only a year and a half now, I've come to realize that we have an extremely talented staff in our watershed, guided by our administrator, Jeffrey. And he and his staff of 8 exceptionally talented people have done an extraordinary job in managing and moving our projects towards completion. I'd also like to highlight the fact that, in my opinion and experience, having worked with many lawyers and engineers on projects all around the world, that we have one of the finest attorneys and engineers advising us in Lewis Smith and Smith Partners and Scott Sobiak of Bar Engineering. And I think the watershed's done a fine job with the 34 projects. Not sure if that's the exact number, but 34 or 35 that are currently in our 10-year plan. In my opinion, now is the time to change a little bit how we go about doing things. From my perspective, and it's probably an overly broad generalization, it's time to move away from a model of only looking at what needs fixing or is broken. If broken, work it into our 10-year model if it ranked high enough. We've developed our cities and related landscape on a piecemeal basis from the beginning of time. And it's always difficult, if not impossible, to see the future and to see where everything will end up. I think the Spring Road Conservation Projects moves thinking forward, not to just fixing things that are broken, but how we address underlying causes that lead to the problems in the first place. I'm excited and very much in favor of adding this Spring Road Conservation Project to our watershed district portfolio.
Thank you. Manager Cook?
I'll defer until you've spoken, so we save some time, if you don't mind.
Okay, so I just have one quick comment. I know one of my goals that isn't on our 10-year plan is that we should have a climate change plan to get to net zero carbon. And it seems foolish to have a plan if we don't have a permanent address. We can't get there while we're renting. So I hope that this will move us towards a position where we can add to our 10-year plan a net zero carbon goal. That's all I have. Manager Cook?
Thank you. I will try to be succinct here, but so we're having a discussion about the amendment of the plan. First of all, by definition, this is not a capital improvement project, so it does not qualify under 1.3b. We are acquiring land. Doing so is inconsistent with our current plan. This is not an opportunity project. It is not a special situation. Has been available for purchase for years. In fact, going back to, I believe, at least 2021. I've already been discussed. Permit has been granted to develop this property previously. In fact, it was even extended as of a couple of years ago. All under rules that were adopted by the district, deciding that they were sufficient in order to protect our waters. There is nothing in the rules that says we are going to acquire land to protect them on that basis. So again, I want to repeat, this would be an opportunity only if there was third-party funding. There is no third-party funding. And I'll remind everybody that we had the property, I forget on which road, where the 3 houses were purchased, but my understanding was they were purchased, it was a flood control issue, and we received money for elsewhere in order to pay for that. This project is totally different. It is not a project with one on, therefore it's not a capital improvement project within 103B.255. And therefore, regardless of all of the, if you read all the purposes, it's talking about water, 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 water. You know, we decided when we issued a permit, okay, that it was what they did, we required them to do for getting the permit was sufficient to protect our waters on that basis. Nothing has changed. We are in the water business. We are not in the general environment business. We are not in the carbon neutral business on that basis. So again, this does not fit with, and so we should not be talking about that. But let me get to the, I want to jump over to the plan or the plan amendment itself. You're talking about the ecological benefits. Ecological benefits are not spelled out in our purposes. What is spelled out is dealing with water and protecting our waters. There's been no demonstration that this is going to be beneficial to the waters for the reason I said. We already have permits that, you know, we've decided are sufficient to protect our waters. There is no reason to acquire this property. And although it's great to have, as I said, maybe it's great to buy this property, it is not within our purposes. We are not the be all end all general purpose entity. We are a limited purpose government entity, and we are required to operate within the purposes. This does not fall within the purposes of either 103B, because it's not a capital improvement project, nor does it fall within 103D, because it addresses does not address any of the purposes for which for which we can do business. They all have 103D has all to do with flood control, has to do with drainage, reclaim and fill land, talks about water supply for irrigation, streams, talks about diverting water courses, conserving water supply, sanitation, and goes on again, hydroelectric power, etc. You'll not find in there any reference to ecological or diversification, nor will you find anything in that list having to do with carbon neutral. You know, we're going outside of our box, and the legislature has decided what boxes are appropriate. So if you want to change the statute, fine, but the statute is as it was. But I think it's also important to address this proposed, in my opinion, the plan amendment is misleading. Again, I've already said ecology doesn't apply under the various purposes for which we're established. But more importantly, the scoring, okay, is what we used to call in the business was MAI, made as instructed. Okay? The determination scoring is simply that, made as instructed. It strikes me as wanted a certain result and we filled in the boxes. And if you go to the goal index was rated 5, if you really analyze it, there's no creek or lake to restore. There's no wetland impacts that wasn't covered by the rules. There's no evidence of fish or waterfowl issues. There's no floodplain issues that we deal with. So giving it a 5 is a bogus determination. And at best, I would put it at 3. Also, the sustainability index, they put it at a 7. Now, if you go to this sustainability index, you know, who prepared that had 44 items they thought were applicable. Well, I went through that items and it was only 23 that even reasonably were applicable to this project. Furthermore, under volume management and index, you put a 1. Well, giving 1 for something that has no impact, okay, is distorting the whole the matter of evaluating this issue. It should be a 0, as should each one, including pollutant management, stabilization, habitat restoration, and certainly partnership that at best would be 1 if we're going to get $500,000. It's certainly not a 7. And education is not in our bailiwick. It's a great thing, but it's not in our bailiwick, and it's not something that we should be using to determine whether or not we fund a project or put it in our plan. And watershed benefit, again, you put down as 1 because there is none, but they shouldn't even get a 1 because it's not applicable. So the scoring system is inappropriate. And if you add those up, this comes up with 7 at best. Double it, it's 14. Triple it, it's 21. But still under the 30, which we have stated. 30 is the threshold for moving any project forward. So therefore, simply by our own metrics, this project does not qualify for being included in the plan, okay, nor being funded at all. And let me just finish. And also with respect to the plan amendment, the plan amendment does not take into account years after 2028. But we're proposing to fund this or bond this over 20 years. So we have no plan to cover from 2029 onward. Okay, so we have no idea the impact it may have on other projects. For that reason alone, this plan amendment is inaccurate, inadequate, and should not be approved. And besides the fact of putting this project in 2023 as an acquisition, somehow somebody's sneaking in $2.5 million to do something which isn't even discussed. So I don't even know where that came from. But the bottom line is, for this project, this plan amendment is wholly inadequate because it does not cover post 2028 numbers. Well, let me go. Let's see what else. This just has to do with the plan amendment. But again, the bottom line is that it's not a capital improvement project. It doesn't fit within the definitions of the plan, and therefore we should not be adopting this plan at all. And the final thing is, we should be in no hurry. Okay, we should be in no hurry. Nobody's going to develop this property. We still have litigation going on, and without a written document signed by the okay, we have to assume that this litigation could continue, and if it's successful, would eliminate any need to purchase this property. So the plan does not take that into account. And as I said before, should be going out there and getting the money to buy this property. And if that's the case, then it's protected. But this is not within our wheelhouse, and we should not be approving this plan, because we can adequately protect it without acquiring it, because we have rules to that effect that would adequately protect it. And let me just add, I remember during the permitting meeting that I asked, well, what's the impact on the creek or anything like that? And Administrator Jeffrey explicitly said, there's no problems with the creek. And I'll also go back, if you go back and look at the chart, the original map in the 10-year plan, there are no blue squiggles, there are no red squiggles, there are no dots having anywhere close to or having anything to do with this property. The dots for projects and the squiggles for needed restoration elsewhere, in particular in Carver County. I believe Ms. Bockham is trying to flag me down as being.
You're out of time.
I will yield back then.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and we've all had our time to discuss. Is there any other quick questions before we go to our roll call vote? Hearing none, Attorney Smith, can you take the roll call vote, please?
Yes. Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Without waiving any of my prior objections, no.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda then is the resolution 23-074 requesting, if I got this right, the long-term.
73073.
7-3.
Oh, okay. I jumped ahead again. So, resolution 23-073. Do we have any motions on this item?
President Ziegler, I'd like to move that we adopt resolution 23-073, ordering the Spring Hill Conservation Project.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I assume that we're gonna have to go through each manager again. If you've already said everything you need to say, just say that instead. Let's start with Manager Kraft.
Well, I'm ready to vote, but I guess I would comment. For years, we've okayed permits. Basically, we've been focused on volume and kind of velocity and rate of waters that are going through the watershed district and ending up in the Gulf. And those things haven't really improved things. And this property is an opportunity, as we're learning from nature, that there's a water cycle is involved as part of ecosystems. And when nature is fully functioning with native plants and the different organisms that are associated with that, either in the soil or above, those things have evolved together, and they have at least 4 environmental functions that are really important. And one of them is the water cycle. And we're learning that when rain falls, if it doesn't fall on an organic sponge, it's going to run off. But if it does, you're having an opportunity for transpiration to happen as water comes back up through the vegetation, whether it's trees or prairie or whatever, and that can actually cool the local environment. So this is an opportunity for us to figure out exactly how we can work with nature and how we can reduce some of the aridity in the soil and the heat and the drought, because from what I'm learning, what we do in an urban area is contributing to that statewide and nationwide. So I think this is an extremely important project, and that's why I support ordering this project.
Thank you. Manager Pedersen.
I am very much in support of what Manager Crafton just said, and I think I talked about why I'm in support of this project enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Manager Duval.
I'm in support of what Manager Crafton said as well, and I've said what I wanted to say.
Thank you. So I agree with what Manager Crafton said, and the water cycle is definitely something that cleans up the water, and we don't really have a problem with the water that actually lands on the lakes. It's the water that lands on hard surfaces, developed surfaces. The water that lands in the forest or on the prairie ends up fairly clean just through nature. The water that lands on rooftops and roads ends up pretty dirty, polluted with salt and so on. So that's where we have the biggest problem. Can we mute Mr. Jeff Borek or whatever? Thank you. Manager Cook.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, against ordering this project, number one, because it is not necessary. 103D.335 subdivision 11 states that there can be no acquisition of real personal property unless it's necessary. It has not been demonstrated as being necessary to acquire this piece of property. We have already demonstrated that our rules are sufficient to protect the waters on this property. President Ziegler already talked about water running off of hard surfaces, etc. Our rules address that. We provide for holding ponds, etc., to reduce or eliminate the pollutants and the discharge and the erosion. So we've taken this, acquiring this property is not necessary in order to advance the purposes under 103D.201. I've already mentioned it's not necessary to advance the purposes under 103D.201, particularly because this is not a capital improvement project. So we're not in a position to authorizing a capital improvement project. This was an acquisition. By definition, this is not a project. I've already mentioned this is already the subject of permits. We've decided that it was more than adequate to do this. Again, like I said, you know, the environment and other issues, that's great, but that's not within our wheelhouse. That is not what we're organized to do. If we want to change that, then let's go to the legislature and get it changed. But as of now, we are limited to the purposes set forth in 103D and 103B. Finally, I want to mention that 103D requires us to have rules. Okay, we're supposed to operate in accordance with rules. We have no rules regarding land acquisition as required by 103D. The only rules that we have to do with permitting. So we're not in a position of dealing with land acquisition under our in any way, shape, or form because we have no rules. Final thing I want to mention is the fact that this acquisition, whenever it may happen, you know, will cause us to exceed our budget, which would be a violation in 103D. And as Attorney Smith has said on a number of occasions, having asked him, saying we can't increase our budget amount. We are stuck with our budget amount. Acquiring this property would at a minimum cause us to exceed our expenditure level by some approximately $600,000 in this year. And again, finally, you know, increases of 8 and 11% per year are just unacceptable. People are dealing with enough inflation. Adding to their burden is not an answer. Going to the general public and getting the entire public to contribute is an answer. It is not an answer to go put this burden on a limited number of taxpayers, especially the people in Carver County who will receive no benefit from this. And what will happen is their projects will be delayed and they'll end up paying more money for projects that are already part of this project. And I just want to focus and realize $5.775 million is for 90% of 1 year's budget. That is crazy. The other thing is we don't go and acquire other properties. We just approved a permit out in Minnesota for, I think it was Excel, to put in a maintenance center. There were wetlands on that. I didn't see anybody coming out and saying, well, let's go acquire that land so we can go save those wetlands. Okay. So this is a made up situation. It's a great project, but not for us. It is not within the scope of the statutes that we are dealing with. It is adequately protected by permits. It's adequately protected by Minnesota environmental laws, including the DNR, and we know that they've looked at the cattail, et cetera. So they're responsible for that. Okay, there's been no evidence of any need to do any further protection other than our rules. It has not been established. So therefore, we should be voting no on ordering this project. And as I've already said, ordering this project is premature. The review period has not run. The minimum period of time between end of the review and a hearing has not occurred. And therefore, it would be improper illegal, in my opinion, to order this project when the review period has not run, notwithstanding what Attorney Smith has said. So again, I would ask everybody, go out there and find the money. Find the money. And if nobody else wants to put in the money, we would be fiscally irresponsible for putting up this kind of money when you can't get any conservation, okay, organization to put up that kind of money, because they know the money is better spent elsewhere. It's not that the project, it would, or doing this or buying it would be bad. It's just down in the priorities. What could you do with $5.775 million instead of buying this property, especially when our own rules say we are adequately protecting the waters in the development, and we are stuck with developing the waters. We're not here to go run a prairie program, okay? That's not in our bailiwick. And the other thing about it is we don't need to acquire the whole property. If there is a risk to the slopes, those slopes under the development plan are being dedicated to Eden Prairie free. Why would we pay for them? That's just silly. That's just plain silly to pay for something that you can get for free. And nobody has demonstrated, a need to acquire this property within the purposes, for which we are organized. So with that, let me one thing. I think we need to go and look at 103D. As I read that, we're supposed to be renting, or no, not even renting. We're supposed to be using other public facilities. I don't read that. I don't see anywhere it says we can go lease them, and I certainly don't see any place where we can go buy or build a building. And what 9 Mile or Capital Region does not concern me, because that's not my watershed district. So if they want to go break the rules and the law, they can go ahead and do that. But we can't build this. I was under a mistaken impression a long time ago. Instead, I looked at the rules. We're supposed to be using other public facilities. There is no exception, to using public facilities. So we shouldn't be getting trapped by thinking, well, we can have this education facility or offices, et cetera. No, we're not allowed to do that. So, and I just wanted to give me one moment. I wanted to go back. Again, Manager Kraft and Pedersen develop. Yeah, I get it. It would be great to protect this. But that's not in our wheelhouse. It's just not. And we're saddled with it. And we take a solemn oath to uphold the constitutions, which means we take a solemn oath to uphold the laws. And ordering this project would be a violation of those laws, a violation of our oaths. Okay, and we should be removed if we are going to go and violate our solemn oaths. So with that, I believe I'm just one last check. I think I'm done. Check the building. And the other thing is, I'll just mention, education is great. I'm not against education, but it is not one of the purposes listed, okay, for the watershed district. So I think we should, like I said, it'd be great to do it. But again, this project doesn't meet our very own criteria. We don't have any independent determination of this. We have no evidence that shows that it meets our criteria. In fact, I've shown that it does not meet our criteria and it should not be ordered. And I'll yield back at this point.
Thank you. Attorney Smith, do you have anything to add, or can we go to a roll call vote?
I think we can proceed to roll call.
Okay.
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Without waiving my prior objections, no.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
The resolution carries 4-1.
Okay, so does that bring us to item 6, the resolution to 23-074? Okay. So do we have any motions regarding resolution 23-074 requesting lawn long-term bond funding from Hennepin County.
President Ziegler, I move that we adopt resolution 23-074, requesting
sec-
long-term funding.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments regarding this resolution?
Yes, Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
I think it's important to repeat. The problem here is that our plan ends in 2028. You're proposing bonds that are going to exceed the length of our plan. And on that basis, I don't think we are authorized to engage in any transaction that is going to go beyond the end of our plan. And that plan then should be, if you're going to try to do funding with bonds, our plan needs to be amended to deal with years beyond 2028, during which these bonds would be, as I understand it, would be paid back. Or at least money would be collected to be paid, at least in interest and principal. So I'm opposed to adopting this resolution.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments regarding this resolution?
Oh, excuse me. I have one other comment. I believe the statute in 103D is particularly clear that we are not in a position, we are not allowed to borrow more than $2 million from any county or financial institution. And you can call this what it is, but if Hennepin County is issuing the bonds, they're getting the bonds and they're lending us the money. When in this case, it's more than $2 million, it would be a violation of a particular provision in 103D.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith, do you have any comments or can we go to a roll call vote?
Managers, we are comfortable that this action is within your statutory authority within Minnesota statutes, chapter 103B.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments before we go to a roll call vote? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote on resolution 23-074 requesting long-term bonding from Hennepin County?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Without waiving my prior objections, no.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Resolution carries 4-1.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to adopt resolution 23-075 to call a special meeting for December 6th at 7 p.m. Do we have any motions on this resolution?
President Ziegler, I move that we adopt resolution 23-075 to call for a special meeting December 6th, 7 o'clock.
Do we have a second?
sorry, I was muted. I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on this resolution?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I want to reiterate my objection to this because I do not believe the review period required under statute will have expired by that period of time, and having a meeting prior to the earliest possible date under the statutes for having a hearing have not passed. Therefore, this is not an appropriate subject matter for a meeting, whether it be special or regular meeting. And also, need to reiterate that this, excuse me, reiterate that, you know, this financing, if it's talking about it, I believe it's also going to be subject to the limitation on the amount of borrowings under 103D 355 subdivision 17. And then finally, a comment is that as I was thinking about the presentation, so what I would like to know is what is the basis for position being taken that there's only a 30-day window to object to the plan?
That
Mr.
sounds like a
President.
question for Administrator Jeffrey or Mr. Smith.
Mr. President, the 30-day comment period comes under Minnesota Rule 8410. I believe it's 0140. I quoted earlier concerning the provision for minor plan amendments. And that is the provision that the Board of Water and Soil Resources cited in its comment.
Well,
And that
Mr.
is consistent
President,
with the district's plan.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
well, I just want to reiterate my prior position that that rule, if it says what Mr. Smith says, goes beyond the authorization of the Board of Soil and Water Resources in amending, in shortening the period of time, that would be contrary to the explicit provisions within the statute, and the matter for minor plan amendments do not provide for shortening that period of time on that basis. So again, I object to the shortening of the period of time and reiterate my objection to this meeting having a hearing on the plan and ordering the plan at this point prior to the expiration of the 60-day window under the statute. I yield.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on this resolution?
President Ziegler?
Manager
Oh.
Kraft?
All right, so I'm going to be at a premier soil health event in Mankato, the 5th through the 6th. Barring a blizzard, I'm fine with this, but just in case something happens, I just wanted to let you know. So I expect
Okay.
to be back in time and there shouldn't be any problems, but you never know what the weather's going to do.
Thank you. Yeah, it is Minnesota. Okay, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
On resolution 23075, Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
No.
Excuse me. Without waiving my prior objections, I vote no.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
The resolution carries 4-1.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to approve the after the fact permit 2023-066 or 6607 Horseshoe Curve. Do we have any motions on this item? So I'll make a motion to approve after the fact permit 2023-066.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is our engineer Sobiak going to go through this?
President Ziegler, managers, this did not rise to the level of needing engineer review because it would have been an administrative permit. The builder, LDK, actually turned themselves in, came back to us, said that they had started a construction project. We have had them, they put together the plans and maintenance declaration showing a buffer area on lake that is consistent with Rule J. which is the stormwater management rule as it applies to single-family residential lots that were in existence at the time of the rules being implemented in 2015, and that they have some recognized best management practice, but it does not rise to the level of scrutiny that a subdivision or commercial development would. They have provided financial assurance for it, and they are nearly completed with the project.
Okay, do any of the managers have any questions or comments on this item?
Yes, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
trying to get familiar with, you have a map of where this is located?
One was not included in the report, but I can certainly bring one up here quick if you have another question while I'm doing that.
Well, yeah, my question is that, I think we made it clear that we're going to make sure that as a condition to these after the facts that, the district's going to get paid for time and effort of staff, and the managers. And I'm wondering if that is included in the fees.
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, yes, it is. Excess cost recovery has been included in there in that fee.
Well, maybe I missed it, but I think it would be important to spell that out. Or maybe I just overlooked it as.
It's in there.
But excuse me, I'm sorry if you're President Ziegler.
I'm just trying to see where it is. Excess, you said excess recovery.
I don't think we call it excess recovery in the.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, sorry. But should be listed. Yeah, so the nice thing about single family residential property, because they do not need to supply a model, that's where the extensive amount of time goes in is reviewing the engineered civil plans and the native model. $200 is usually more than adequate to cover the cost of review. Since they were a self-reporter, there was very little going back and forth out to the site. They were not belligerent. They were not trying to avoid compliance. So they did not run up extra costs with additional meetings with them.
Well, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I mean, I find it a little hard to believe that cost would only be $200, and I certainly think it's great that if they did self-report, but I mean, time is time, and I just want to make sure that we're recovering our time. I think that's the best incentive to get people to comply with the permitting rules. And I know we're just on this topic here again, but we're talking about education. I believe we need to repeatedly get the word out about the need for permits. And I think this now is a good time to do it because people are going to start considering doing projects over the winter. And I think it would behoove us to get the word out. I don't know if Chanhassen or Eden Prairie or whatever are having any more publications coming up, but we need to, I think it would behoove us to make sure we get an article, et cetera, in there about the need for permits, especially, lakes and restorations, et cetera.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments on this resolution? Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Without waiving any of my prior objections, I'll vote yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the workshop calendar discussion.
President Ziegler, managers, at the last meeting when we talked about holding meeting on the state, Manager Cook had asked that a calendar be provided at this time so that he had time to look at it prior to our December meeting. What I am proposing are quarterly meetings. Let me share my screen. And again, I'm not looking for any action on that this time. It's merely informative to get it in front of the managers, to get them thinking about it as we move forward to the December meeting. So a January, April, July, and October meeting. Note at the bottom, the schedule. I am anticipating that as new projects, programs, or other things come to fruition, we may have 1 hour or 45-minute workshops prior to our regular meetings, as we have in the past. I've gone through the governance manual and tried to pull out the big things that we go through. Have an annual report draft for you in January to start reacting to, bring the district work plan to you in January. I put in italics the EHAP. I am thinking, and after speaking with Fred Rosamowski from BAR, that this may be one, and I'd like the managers to think about it, where it might be good to have I won't say a full day workshop, but something where we went from 2 p.m. to feed to dinner or something of that nature, so that we have some time to really dive into it. April would be the fund balance report, because we'll have the final year-end results from 23. Governance manual, all of the edits, and then the audit. Hopefully we could have Abdo present at that meeting. July, bring the draft budget. Depending upon what happens, Minnesota Watersheds is not necessarily, and President Ziegler and Manager Crafton, you probably could speak to this better than I. They may be moving away from resolutions and looking to develop a full legislative platform for Minnesota Watersheds. So that's kind of a placeholder, but so we're not scrambling at the last minute to come up with resolutions to put forward at the end. But we could do that at that time. October, review the district work plan. Where are we at with our projects? Look at professional services, review of needs, status, and prep for the RFQs, and then a fall tour. I put other potential special work sessions in list at the bottom. The bottom 3 revisions based upon the 3 legs of our stool, based upon what comes out of the EHAP. Since I cannot program them in on a specific date, I put them out in that area. And targeted outreach, I've heard from the managers, townhomes, associations, things of that nature. Don't know that we would need another workshop on it, but something out there. If there are specific education or presenters that people want in, Manager Crafton seems to know almost everybody in the 5-state region, so perhaps we can bring someone in to speak. And then strategic planning has been talked about. So that's it. I really just wanted to get this in front of the managers so that at December you can react to it in an intelligent way.
Do any of the managers have questions or comments? Manager Cook?
Yes. I think I mentioned it before when talking about the fact, I think first of all, talking about eliminating them, but I find the workshops, they're great. I can focus on receiving information. I don't have to be thinking about, we're going to pass this resolution or do that resolution. Things come in last. So, I mean, I'll study this, but I think there has to be more than 4. I think we need to be, I can just talk about the work plan. The work plan should be done at the same time as the budget, because the work plan is what we're going to do. So we should be making sure that they tie together. And I'm thinking, you need to do that before October. And I think it should be in lockstep with the budget. But you don't know what's going to come up. So I don't see a reason why not to schedule. We can always cancel. Okay, but adding meetings is a pain. Special meetings, and probably I'll find out what a pain it is. On that basis. So I just like Administrator Jeffrey to, rethink this. And I know there was some talk about it being, challenging, time consuming. I think with workshops, unless a staff person is actually going to be presenting, staff doesn't have to be there. If they, I don't see there's any requirement. I'm not sure unless it pertains to, engineering, that Mr. Sobiek has to be there, or Mr. Smith. So I'd like to see you take that into consideration. In maybe looking at and rethinking, the schedules for it. But, just to close, I think it's been great this year having these workshops so we can address specific items and get information and have a discussion. Trying to cram something in at 5 p.m. I don't think is conducive to doing good work at the meeting. At least that's my position. So I yield back.
Thank you. So one other just food for thought is, do these need to be in the evening for the workshops? So
Well,
just
Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
well, some of us are still employed, and having things during the day is not conducive generally to getting, my number one job done. I don't know how Manager Pedersen thinks about that. Having things during the day are just difficult, and I look forward to having them, in the evening. It's easier for me to be able to focus on them as opposed to having them during the day. And I also think it's more conducive for the public to be able to participate if they want to. And while we're talking about legislation, I mean, us having to have in-person meetings, even though very creatively Mr. Smith has, I think, tried to come up with an exception. I don't see the need to have to go, schlep to places to have a meeting. The rest of the world doesn't do that anymore, and the state doesn't do it. So it seems to me what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So anybody has any input there at Minnesota Waters, I think we already talked about it. People want to meet, face to face. That's what they want to do. But I don't know. I just don't like schlepping out especially in the wintertime. So I yield back.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, there's Administrator Jeffrey, there's nothing else on the agenda except adjourn. Is there anything more that you needed to say, or Attorney Smith? I see some head shaking no. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, we're at
There.
it. Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Do we have any questions before we adjourn? Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Without waiving my prior objections, yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.